We'll start with three chants of Om. 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 Sahanavavatu. Sahanau bhunaktu. Sahaviryam karavavahai. Tejasvinavati namastu. Ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Gita Dhyanam. Om Parthaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Grahitam Puranamunina Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitamritavarshini Bhagavati Ashtadashaധ്യായിനി Amba Twamanusandadhami Bhagavad-gite Bhavadvishini Namostute Vyasavishala-buddhe Pullaravindayata-patra-netra येन त्वया भारततैलपूर्णः प्रज्वालितो ज्ञानमयप्रदीपः प्रपन्नपारिजाताय स्तोत्रवैप्रेकपाणये ध्यानमुद्राय कृष्णाय गीतामृतदुहे नमः। सर्वोपनिषदो गावो भोक्ता गोपालनन्दना पार्थो वत्सस्सुधीर्भोक्ता दुग्धं गीतामृतं महत् वसुदेवसुदं देवं कंसचाणूरमर्दनं देवकी परमानन्दं कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुं भीष्मद्रोणतटा जयद्रथजला गान्धारनीलोत्पला शल्यग्राहवती कृपेण वहनी कर्णेन वेलाकुला अश्वत्थामविकर्णघोरमकरा दुर्योधनावर्तिनी स्तोतीर्णा खलु पाण्डवैरननडी कैवर्तककेशवा पाराशर्यवचः सरोजममलं गीतार्थगन्धोत्कटं नानाज्ञानककेशरं हरिकथा सम्बोधनाबोधितम् लोके सज्जनषट्परैरहरः पीपीयमानं बुधा भूयाद्भारतपङ्कजं कलिमला प्रध्वंसि न श्रेयसे मूकं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुं लङ्घयति गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे परमानन्दमाधवं यं ब्रह्मा वरुणेन्द्ररुद्रमरुतः सुन्वन्ति दिव्यैस्तवै वेदे साङ्गपदक्रमोपनिषदे गायन्ति यं सामगा ध्यानावस्थिततद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यं योगिनो यस्यान्तं न विदुःसुरासुरगणा देवाय तस्मै नमः देवाय तस्मै नमः देवाय तस्मै नमः।
So that's an auspicious beginning after the Gita Dhyanam, the clock chiming. I don't know how many of you heard. So we saw last time the valiant, the extremely respected statesman like Duryodhana, he approached the most outspoken, impatient of all teachers and expressed thoughts of great wisdom. We all saw that last time, right? The exact opposite happened. So Duryodhana, he had this knack of stepping on others' toes, and it didn't matter who it was, whether it was Bhishma, the Pitamaha or the grandsire, Dronacharya, who was his guru, or even Sri Krishna. He has done that in his life multiple number of times. And in this particular case, it was never clear what his intent was, but what came out was pretty obvious. Firstly, it very obviously came out that he doubted and was insecure of his guru Dronacharya. And the second thing that was apparent was that he wanted to size up Dronacharya and analyze his intent in terms of where his mind lay. That is Dronacharya's mind lay. So let's dwell for a few minutes on dharma. Last time I mentioned to you that we will talk about dharma later in this class. So let's do that right now. As we all know, there are a number of cosmic laws. Okay, and like, for example, gravitation is a cosmic law, right? The law of inertia is a cosmic law. Dharma is probably the biggest and the greatest amongst of all cosmic laws. Dharma is universal, dharma is timeless, and it is something that every entity must follow. Dharma is derived from the root dhar, and the meaning of dharma is to uphold, sustain, or support. These are the meanings of dharma. So it essentially denotes that which holds together the different aspects and qualities of an object into a whole, into the entire whole object. That is dharma. Dharma is also, in the ordinary world, in the ordinary sense, it is translated into a number of different kinds of meanings. People refer to dharma when they refer to religious code. They refer to dharma when they talk of righteousness, goodness, being good, morality. When we refer to duty, dharma is mentioned, charity, and so on and so forth. But the best rendering of dharma is that it is the law of being. What does that mean, the law of being? That which makes anything or being what it is. For example, it is the dharma of fire to burn. The burning of the fire is what makes it the fire. It is the dharma of the sun to shine. So that which makes a thing or being what it is dharma. Thus, dharma can also be said of as the essential nature of anything, without which, without that essential nature, that thing or that entity cannot retain its independent existence. For example, you can never have a cold and dark sun. Heat and light are the dharma of the sun. So a cold, dark sun is an impossibility. So the Bhagavad Gita starts with the word dharma, and in verse 1.1, if you remember, dharma kshetre, and it also concludes with the word mama or mine. That is, when we come to the end of the Bhagavad Gita, verse 18.78, the last word of the Bhagavad Gita is mama. So we can safely say that whatever is there in between the first word and the last word of the Bhagavad Gita is the content of the Bhagavad Gita. So the contents of the Bhagavad Gita are said to enlighten us on mama dharma. The last word being mama, the first word being dharma. The contents of the Bhagavad Gita are said to enlighten all of us on mama dharma, or my essential nature. So the goal for all of us as we go about reading the Bhagavad Gita is to discover this Mama Dharma, this my essential nature. Now it is also said that one who follows Dharma, Dharma protects that person. So whenever we recognize what our Dharma is and we keep that Dharma as the pole star, when I say pole star, I'm referring it to as the guiding light. When we navigate through our lives, then we will always be successful in the long run. Now in the Mahabharata, we looked at how Duryodhana approached Dronacharya and how he behaved in front of his army, the last satsang. In the Mahabharata, whatever Duryodhana took, whatever steps, whatever he did for his success, he did with a principle of something that went against Dharma. So that is adharma. And in the long run, when you look at it in the context of his entire life, though in between, in pockets during his life, it may have seemed successful, but when you look at it in the context of his entire life, it was a recipe for failure. At the same time, whatever the Pandavas did, there are times when you read the Mahabharata, it appears extremely foolish, stupid at times, okay? But they did it in the context upholding what their dharma was. And we see that when you look at their entire life together, it was successful. And it worked out for them. So we saw that Duryodhana went to Dronacharya. It's right before the war. And he was raving and ranting. Dronacharya was entirely silent. And last satsang, we concluded at a stage where Bhishma says enough is enough, because he could sense the restlessness that was creeping not just into Dronacharya, but also into the rest of the army. And just before the battle, if the army becomes restless, then disaster is going to unfold. So he picked up his conch and gave out a lion's roar. So we will get to that now. So we'll read verse 1.12.
Tasya sanjanayan harsham.
Tasya sanjanayam harsham.
Guru vriddha pitamaha.
Guru vriddha pitamaha.
Simhanadam vinadyochai.
Simhanadam vinadyochai.
Shankam dadmau pratapavan.
Shankam dadmau pratapavan.
Tasya sanjanayan harsham. Guru vriddha pitamaha. Simhanadam vinadyochai. Shankam dadmau pratapavan.
So as Sarika said, Simhanadam, there was this roar of a cloudburst. Here it started to rain here in Whitefield, and we could hear the cloudburst. So Simhanadam, that means lion's roar. Bhishma gave out that lion's roar. But before that, Tasya Sanyanayam Harsham. Harsham means joy. Causing joy to Tasya means that kind of a person. The person who was essentially insecure, not sure of what is going on, blabbering quite incoherently. Causing joy to that kind of a person. Kuru Vriddha Pitamaha. So among the most experienced of Kurus, of the Kauravas, he was also one of the oldest. There was one person who was older than him in the battlefield. But in terms of experience, Bhishma was the most experienced among the Kurus. And he is also the grandsire of the Kauravas and the Pandavas too. So he understood the hearts of both Dronacharya. Dronacharya was steadfast, Dronacharya was silent. He was waiting for the ordeal to get together, did not speak a word. that itself showed a lot that, he's not responding to Duryodhana at all. And on the other extreme, Duryodhana going on and on and on, almost like a verbal diarrhea, making everyone uncomfortable. Bhishma picked up the hearts of these two people in terms of what's going on. And then the mighty Bhishma gave out this lion's roar and blew his conch. And almost as an immediate response, what happened? We will recite verse 13.
Tata shankascha bhairyascha
Tata shankascha bhairyascha
panavanaka gomukaha
navanaka gomukaha
sahasaivaabhyahanyanta
sahasaivaabhyahanyanta
sashabdastu mulo bhavat
sashabdastu mulo bhavat
tata shankascha bhairyascha panavanaka gomukaha sahasaivaabhyahanyanta sashabdastu mulo bhavat.
Shanka. Shanka means conches. Bhairya. Bhairya means drums. Those kettle drums. And Panava also means drums, different kinds of drums, tabor drums. And all other kinds of drums, the anaka. So some drums you beat, from top to down, other drums you beat from the side. There are various other drums, you kind of shake them and it beats. All kinds of drums. Gomukha, cow horns, different kind of horns, including cow horns. All of them quite suddenly started blaring forth, almost as immediately as following the great Bhishma's conch sound. The entire Kaurava army, they started blowing their conches, beating their drums, blowing their horns. Doesn't it remind you of Modi ji's war against the coronavirus? So when you get into battle, this is what you do. And that sound was tumultuous. Shabda means sound and stumulo means tumultuous. That sound was extremely tumultuous. The commanders and the second in command, we all saw that they were getting extremely restless. And as Bhishma blew his conch, they just didn't wait. All of them, they are warriors. They are standing there waiting for the war to start. And then here they are witnessing some kind of a lecture that didn't make sense to them. Immediately all of them followed. And what filled the air was a fantastic, amazing sound. However, even though the sound was described as tumultuous, it did not create much panic among the Pandavas. You could see that, they were calm, they were collected, they were waiting for this sound to die down. And it's almost like when you see movies, now Sanjaya is describing sitting in the palace to King Dhritarashtra. So the camera pans the entire battlefield, moves from the Kauravas towards the Pandavas. And he talks about the Pandavas in verse 14.
Tata shveter hair yukte
Tata shveter hair yukte
mahatisyandani stitau
mahatisyandani stitau
madhava pandavaschaiva
madhava pandavaschaiva
divyau shankau pradadmatuhu
divyau shankau pradatmatuhu
tata shveter hair yukte mahatisyandani stitau madhava pandavaschaiva divyau shankau pradadmatuhu.
So this verse 14 of chapter 1 is a beautiful verse because this is where we get introduced, or it's a perfect setting to bring in two of the main characters, great characters of the Mahabharata and of the Bhagavad Gita. Not just the Mahabharata, but the two main characters or the two only characters of the Bhagavad Gita. So Tata means then. Shvetair hayer yukte, yoking the white horses. So the white horses are purposefully described, as a contrast to the dark complexioned Bhagavan Sri Krishna. So it's a beautiful setting, In front are the white horses, right behind is the magnificent dark complexioned Bhagavan. Mahati, described by Sanjaya as magnificent, the chariot in which Sri Krishna and Arjuna are sitting. And what do they do seated in the chariot? Sthitau means seated in the chariot. And this chariot has been gifted to Arjuna by Agni Devta. It is one of the most magnificent chariots. Madhava, Pandavas Chaiva. Madhava is another name for Sri Krishna. And Pandava here is reference to the Pandava Arjuna. They blew their divine conches. And how did they blow it? Divyau. Divyau means divine. Shankau. Pradat Matu. So if you recollect, when Sanjaya describes blowing of conches by the great Bhishma and the Kaurava forces, he does not use the word Divyau. He does not use the word pra. This is the beauty of the Sanskrit language and also the beauty of Sri Vedavyasa's poetry. So when Sanjaya uses these terms, he is using them to make an impact on Dhritarashtra and describing to him how magnificent the chariot looks, painting that scenario there, how beautiful Sri Krishna looks on it, how valiant Arjuna is looking, and how divine the sound of their conches are, and how they are playing brilliantly. Dadmau was used in the verse where it was described to the blowing of conches by the Kauravas. Here it is Pradadmau. Pra stands for brilliant, brilliantly blowing your conches. Now Sri Krishna is referred to as Madhava. Ma is Lakshmi, goddess Lakshmi or Mother Lakshmi. Dhava is husband. So this is the Lord who is the husband of the goddess Lakshmi, who is the charioteer or who is the driver, if to use the modern term, for Arjuna. So the Lord himself, God himself, has become the servant, and the Bhakta, who is Arjuna, has got Bhagavan, Lord Sri Krishna, on his side. And they together blew their conches in a brilliant manner. So the scene in the Kaurava army, if you recollect, Bhishma actually blew his conch to stop Duryodhana from continuing to speak. And obviously, it was an impromptu action. It was not a planned action. Whereas the Pandavas were calm and quiet. They were listening to the Kaurava conches and the drums and the horns and so on and so forth. Took a deep breath when their turn came, and then they let go. And that brilliance, that actually went into a crescendo, which then became a war symphony. And that impact of this is described by Sanjaya in a manner that not only paints a beautiful picture of this scene in the Mahabharata, but it also shows that Sanjaya's sympathies lay with the Pandavas. And not only that, that he's also hoping that through this description, Dhritarashtra gets enamored, Dhritarashtra gets, very, very knowledgeable, and then he says, let's stop this war. Even at that moment is another underlying hope that Sanjaya has. Let's read verses 15 and 16.
Panchajanyam Rishikesho
Panchajanyam Rishikesho
Devadattam Dhananjayaha
Devadattam Dhananjayaha
Poundram Dadmau Mahashankam
Poundram Dadmau Mahashankam
Bhima Karma Vrikodharaha
Bhima Karma Vrikodharaha
Ananta Vijayam Raja
Nanta Vijayam Raja
Kunti Putro Yudhishthiraha.
Kuntiputro Yudhishthiraha.
Nakulas Sahadevascha.
Nakulas Sahadevascha.
Sugoshamani Pushpakau.
Ghoshamani Pushpakau.
Panchajanyam Rishikesho. Devadattam Dhananjayaha. Paundram Dadmau Mahashankam. Bhima Karma Vrikodharaha. Anantavijayam Raja. Kuntiputro Yudhishthiraha. Nakulas Sahadevascha. Sugoshamani Pushpakau.
So in these two verses, we have Sanjaya, who is going great lengths to describe the experience or what he is visualizing of Sri Krishna and the five Pandavas blowing their conches. And he is also very particular to mention the names of each of their conch. And this is because he wants to show he wants to emphasize the fact that they were blown in a coordinated manner, starting from a very calm and collected point, and the crescendo reached into an orchestra, and also to show or tell Dhritarashtra that, hey, can you believe it? The Pandavas' conches even have names. So Hrishikesho or Hrishika. Hrishikesho has two parts to it. Hrishika are the senses and the mind. The five senses and the mind put together is referred to as Hrishika. And Isha is Lord. The indwelling power behind the senses and the mind, which is the very life principle, the indwelling power. Because of this life principle, the senses and the mind are able to function. And that is what is referred to as Bhagwan Sri Krishna in terms of Hrishikesha. And his conch, the name of his conch is Panchajanya. And that name Panchajanya comes from Bhagwan Sri Krishna's victory over a demon named Panchajana, and it signifies victory. Then he comes to Dhananjaya. Dhananjaya is another name for Arjuna. And Arjuna's conch is called Devadatta. Devadatta, why? Because this was given by the Deva Lord Indra. The Lord of the heavens, Indra, gave Arjuna the Devadatta conch. Why is he called Dhananjaya? Dhananjaya means winner of wealth. The winner of wealth means Dhananjaya. Now, when Yudhishthira became king, before they were sent for exile and all that, Yudhishthira was king. And at that time, like all kings, Yudhishthira had his consecration ceremony. And, along with that, the Indian emperors, they used to perform something called the Rajasuya Yagya. It's like a sacrifice. And that sacrifice is meant to establish the sovereignty of the king who is performing that sacrifice with all other rulers that are in that area or in the world at that time. So, Arjuna's job was to go around to all other kingdoms and make them accede and make them agree to the sovereignty of Yudhishthira as the emperor. And those who did not agree, they had to face battle with Arjuna. And, obviously Arjuna was one of the best warriors at that time, and whoever did not agree had to battle, and they all lost. And whether they exceed or whether they lose, they all gift. When somebody wins over you, you gift a lot of wealth to that king. So Arjuna brought back, whenever he came back from these sojourns, he brought back a lot of wealth into Yudhishthira's kingdom. And this wealth is used for the Rajasuya Yagya. And after the Yagya is over, this wealth is distributed among all the citizens of the kingdom. So this is the reason he is called Dhananjaya, because he is the winner of wealth. Vrikodhara is the next one that Sanjaya is talking about. Vrikodhara means someone who has the belly of a wolf. wolf bellied. Don't we all say people who eat like a wolf, I ate like a wolf? So that term comes from the fact that a wolf, always has a concave belly. You don't see a wolf's belly bulging out, even if it is completely fully stuffed. It kind of goes inside. It has a concave belly. At the same time, it is best known for its devouring capacity. It just devours whatever is put in front of the wolf. So if a beast that can eat whatever is there in front of it, and then digest everything so that its belly remains to be concave, it's lucky guy, Bhima was like that. So Bhima, he could eat anything and everything. But at the same time, he had this 8 packs. Okay, absolutely fit and strong human being. And that is the reason he is referred to as Vrikodara here. And Poundram Dadmau Mahashankam. So Bhima is referred to as the achiever of terrible feats. So Poundra is the name of his conch, and it is called Mahashankam. Why? Because as big as Bhima is, his Shanka is also huge. And this Bhima Karma, or the doer of terrible deeds, and why is he called doer of terrible deeds? Because he actually used to finish off demons. Demons like Bakasura, demons like Hidimba, who were massive giants. He used to finish them off with his bare hands. And that Vrikodara, that Bhima Karma, he blew the conch Poundram. And then Yudhishthira. The name Yudhishthira comes from the word Yudhi, which means in battles. When someone is in battle, Sthira means stable. Sthira means one who is very firm. One who is firm in battle is Yudhishthira. And Yudhishthira's conch name appropriately is called Ananta Vijaya. Ananta Vijaya means everlasting victory. So one who is firm in battle is victorious all the time, faces everlasting victory. And that is the name of Yudhishthira's conch. He is also referred to as Kunti Putra here. That is because Kunti, it is to signify that Yudhishthira, who was Dharma Putra, the keeper of Dharma, Dharma Purusha, Kunti, his mother, worshipped Dharma, Lord Dharma, and Lord Dharma blessed her and, took incarnation as her son. And that is why he is this context of Kunti Putra. Lord Dharma also had another incarnation that was as Vidura. And that is a different story which we will touch upon later. So during this time, Lord Dharma was with 2 people. Vidura is the chief minister of the kingdom of Kauravas. And he was one person who always came with sane and practical advice, whether it was Dhritarashtra or whether it was Duryodhana. So Yudhishthira, who was the son of Dharma, Dharmaputra, his conch name was Ananta Vijaya. And Nakula, who is the 4th brother, his conch was called Sughosha, or sweet tone, a conch that has very sweet tones. And Sahadeva conch was Manipushpaka, or gem-flowered conch, which had flowers, gem flowers on his conch. So it beautifully describes, how these conches are, what their effectiveness is, where they come from, and how all of them blew that in coordination with each other to reach that crescendo. Now, some of the commentators of Bhagavad Gita, they refer to the 5 conches of the Pandavas and the 6th, which is Bhagavan Sri Krishna's. They give it a symbolic representation of the 6 mystical chakras or centers that is described in the Yoga Shastras. So that is also an interpretation of the 5 conches and Bhagavan Sri Krishna's 6th conch. So let's recite verses 17 and 18 going forward.
काश्यश्च परमेश्वासा
काश्यश्च परमेश्वास
शिखण्डी च महारथः
शिखण्डी च महारथः
दृष्टद्युम्नो विराटश्च
दृष्टद्युम्नो विराटश्च
सात्यकिश्चापराजितः
सात्यकिश्चापराजितः
द्रुपदो द्रौपदेयाश्च
द्रुपदो द्रौपदेयाश्च
सर्वश्च पृथिवीपते
सर्वश्च पृथिवीपते
सौभद्राश्च महाबाहुः
सौभद्राश्च महाबाहुः
शङ्कान् दद्मो पृथक् पृथक्
शङ्कान् दद्मौ पृथक् पृथक्
काश्यश्च परमेश्वासः शिखण्डी च महारथः दृष्टद्युम्नो विराटश्च सात्यकिश्चापराजितः द्रुपदो द्रौपदेयाश्च सर्वश्च पृथिवीपते सौभद्राश्च महाबाहुः शङ्कान् दद्मो पृथक् पृथक्.
So here Sanjaya is now talking of various other warriors, various other great valiant soldiers, Maharathas. Remember last time we talked about the Maharatha. Maharatha are people who can single-handedly beat an army of over 10,000 soldiers. So Sanjaya is naming Kashya, that is the king of Kashi, who is known as Parameshvasa, which means that he is an excellent archer. He also talks about Shikhandi. Shikhandi was the one who finally in the war slayed Bhima, the general and the grandsire of the Kaurava army. He talks about Drishtadyumna. We have spoken about Drishtadyumna earlier too. Virata, Satyaki, these are the people he talks about. Drupado or Drupada, King Drupada. Draupadeyascha means, Draupadeya means the sons of Draupadi. And all of these people along with the son of Subhadra, Abhimanyu. So he names all these Maharathas. The king of Kashi, who is an excellent archer, Shikhandi, the mighty commander, Drishtadyumna, Virat, Satyaki, who was unconquered. And there is a story behind it which I would like to share in a minute. Drupada and the sons of Draupadi. So Drupada is the father of Draupadi and he's referring to the sons of Draupadi, which means he's talking about the grandfather and the grandsons who are at war together. The son of Subhadra, who is the mighty armed, and all of them blew their conches. How did they blow their conches? Prithak Prithak. Prithak Prithak has two meanings. One is repeatedly and the other is in a coordinated fashion. So not just repeatedly in chaotic fashion, repeatedly in coordinated fashion is Prithak Prithak. And he addresses Dhritarashtra as Prithvi Pate. Prithvi is earth and Pate is Lord. He addresses Dhritarashtra as the Lord of the earth. So he's saying, oh Lord, Dhritarashtra, Lord of the earth. Now look at these people who are Maharathas and they are fighting your army. So be careful. I told you that I'll talk about Satyaki. Why is he called Aparajita? We remember when we did, Prapanna Parijataya. So there, the Parijata tree, which is the tree of fulfillment. This comes in the Gita Dhyana Sloka. Krishna is referred to as Parijata, who gives endlessly. Now, Satyaki was the charioteer of Sri Krishna. So here in the in the war here, Sri Krishna is charioteer of Arjuna, but before that Sri Krishna was a king, and Satyaki was the charioteer of Sri Krishna. And Satyaki, once it is said, went to the heavens to get the flowers of the tree Parijata. He wanted to pluck flowers from the Parijata tree and bring it back to the earth. I mean, why would somebody go to heavens to bring, the flowers from a Parijata tree? I'm sure his wife would have asked him. Okay, that's the reason he went. And he took up this big challenge. Now, the Devas, this Parijata tree is their property in the heavens. They don't want any, one from the planet Earth to come to them and take away the tree. So they actually waged a war. And Satyaki fought all the gods, all the Devas, and was victorious. And that is why he is called Aparajita, which means that he could not be defeated by all of them. We'll go to verse 19.
Saghoshodhatrarashtraanam
Saghoshodhardarashtraanam
Hridayani vyadharayat
Dayani Vyadarayat
Nabasya prithivim chaiva
Nabascha Prithivim Chaiva
Tumulo vyanunadayan
Tumulo Vyanunadayan
Saghoshodhatrarashtraanam Hridayani vyadharayat Nabasya prithivim chaiva Tumulo vyanunadayan.
So Ghosho means that Saghosho, that uproar. And what did that uproar do? Dhardarashtranam, which means Dhritarashtra's party. So he's talking to Dhritarashtra, by the way. So Sanjaya is saying this to Dhritarashtra, and he said that uproar, what did it do to your party? Your party that's out there. He's not referring to the banquet party. He's referring to this, this gathering that has assembled in Kurukshetra to wage the war. In their hearts, Hridayani, in their hearts, what did it do? Vyadarayat, it tore apart their hearts. So Sanjaya is describing this crescendo in terms of what? The war has not even started. It's just the war bugles that are blowing. First from the side of the Kauravas and now from the side of the Pandavas. Just these bugles, just the sound of these, that tore into the hearts of your party out there. So he's telling his king. And how did it do that? Nabhascha Prithivim. Nabha is sky and Prithivim is earth. The sky and the earth. All of these. Vyanuna Dayam. Vyanuna Dayam means they were made to reverberate. The skies and the earth, all of them were reverberating with this tumultuous sound. So while he described the Kauravas playing the conch as tumultuous, here also he uses the word tumultuous to describe, tumulo. But he says that this tumultuous sound, which was played in a pritak pritak, repeatedly coordinated manner, which rose to a war crescendo, that tore into the hearts of the Kauravas, of your army, your party. And how did it do that? By reverberating across the skies and the planet Earth. That is how he describes it. Let's go to verse 20.
Atha vyavasthitan drishtva
Atha vyavasthitan drishtva
Dhatrarashtan kapidvajaha
Artarashtran kapidvajaha
Pravritti shastra sampate
Pravritti shastra sampate
Dhanurudyamya pandavaha
Dhanurudyamya pandavaha
Atha vyavasthitan drishtva Dhatrarashtan kapidvajaha Pravrittitha shastra sampate Dhanurudyamya pandavaha.
We'll recite the next line also. This is actually 2.5, lines. ऋषिकेशं तदा वाक्यम्
ऋषिकेशं तथा वाक्यम् इदमाह महीपते
दमाह महीपते. Now all three together.
अथ व्यवस्थितान् दृष्ट्वा धार्तराष्ट्रान् कपिध्वजः प्रवृत्ति शस्त्रसम्पाते धनुरुद्यम्य पाण्डवः ऋषिकेशं तदा वाक्यम् इदमाह महीपते.
So then atha means then. Vyavasthitan, drishtva. Drishtva is seeing. Vyavasthitan, standing in an arrayed manner. So then seeing this army standing there, which army? Dhardharashtran, which is Dhritarashtra's army. With the Kapidvajaha, the monkey ensign on his chariot. Kapi means monkey. Dvaja means the ensign, the symbol. Even today, if you see army commanders, they will have different rank people will have different signs that denote who they are. A general typically has 4 stars. There is a 5-star general. A brigadier has 1 star, and so on and so forth on their vehicles. In addition to that, they also have uniforms which have various ensigns, but on their vehicles. So on his vehicle, on his chariot, Arjuna has the ensign of a monkey. And at what time? Pravitte. What pravitte? Pravitte means about to begin. What is about to begin? Shastra sampate. The discharge of weapons is about to begin. And with his dhanur, that is with his bow, nicely strung, having taken Udayamya. Udayamya means having taken his bow in his hand. The son of Pandu, that is Arjuna, Pandavas. What did he do? To Hrishikesha. Hrishikesham means to Hrishikesha, that is to Sri Krishna. He spoke Vakyam. He spoke. What did he say? Idamaha. This is what he said. Mahipate. Mahipate refers to Sri Krishna, and Arjuna is addressing him as Mahipate, O Emperor of the universe. So essentially here, what is being portrayed is that Arjuna has seen this army of Dhritarashtra, which is arrayed in front of him, and they are about to start discharging their weapons. They are about to start shooting, firing. And then this son of Pandu, who has this ensign of Hanuman on his chariot, he says to Krishna with the bow in his hand, a strung bow, which means he's got a strung bow, means he's ready to discharge his arrows. And he says to Sri Krishna, O Emperor of the universe. Now, I talked about a monkey as his ensign. Now, the story goes that Bhima, who is the brother of Arjuna, when they were in the 12-year exile, one day Bhima set out to get some food for the other 4 and his wife Draupadi. And as he was going, he saw this large monkey blocking his path. The monkey has come kind of laid down across the road where the path that he was walking, and it was blocking it. And Bhima, of course, he's the strongest person at that point in time, and this monkey is blocking his path. And, Bhima says, get out of my way. I have work to do. And the monkey says, human being, I'm like really tired. I've had a hard day. I'm not going to get up. You please jump over me. And Bhima says, no, I cannot jump over you because that's not the right thing to do. You get up. He orders the monkey to get up. Monkey says, listen, I can't do that. Why don't you just move my tail, just shift it to a little bit, and that path would be enough for you to walk across. So Bhima goes and lifts the tail of the monkey, and guess what happens? He's not able to lift it. And he tries his level best to lift that tail of the monkey, just cannot lift it. And then Bhima realizes that this is not an ordinary monkey. This is some kind of a god. and he says, who are you? He bows to the monkey and he says, you must be some god and you are here to teach me something. So please present who you are. Please show me your real form. And then that monkey becomes Lord Hanuman. Hanuman, as you are aware, we are all aware, most of us, is a bhakt of Lord Sri Rama, who was an earlier incarnation of Vishnu, and also the brother of Bhima. Why? Because it is known that Pavan Devata, or the god of wind, is the father of Hanuman and the father of Bhima. So both of them are actually brothers. And as soon as Bhima sees the real nature of the monkey, Hanuman, he embraces him, and Hanuman gives him a few lessons in life, as well as he knows that he's going to get into a war, and he gives him a few tips as far as the war is concerned. And then Bhima tells Hanuman that this is not good enough, my elder brother, you need to fight this war with me. And Hanumanji says that no, I cannot do that because this is not my era. My era is gone. So I don't live in this era. I just came to wish you. So I cannot fight the war with you, but I will be on your brother's chariot. I will be the ensign on your brother's chariot. And in the war, people roar. People, give roars to frighten the enemy as they are attacking, to give themselves confidence. Even today, infantry soldiers, when they are going and attacking the enemy, they are roaring. Okay, and he says, when you roar, I will, along with you, give a roar, which will, give it a multifold effect on the enemy. And that is the promise that Hanuman gives Bhima. And that's the story of how that monkey ensign is there on Arjuna's chariot. So Arjuna is lucky guy. Not only does he have Krishna as his charioteer, he has Hanuman as his ensign. We'll now recite verses 21 to 23.
Arjuna Uvacha.
Arjuna Uvacha.
Senayorubhayormadhye.
Senayorubhayormadhye.
Ratham Sthapayamechyuta.
Ratham Sthapayamechyuta.
Yavadetan nirikesham.
Yavadetan nireksheham.
Yodhukamanavastithan.
Yodhukamanavastithan.
Kirmaya sahayodhavyam.
Kirmaya sahayodhavyam.
Asmin ranasamudyame.
Asmin ranasamudyame.
Yotsyamana
Yotsyamana-vaksheham.
Ya etetra samagataha.
Ya etreta samagrataha.
Dhatra rashtrasya dhurbuddhe.
Dhartarashtrasya durbuddhe.
Yuddhe priyachikirshavaha.
Yuddhe priyashikirshavaha.
Arjuna uvacha. Senayorubhayormadhye. Ratam stapayamechyuta. Yavadetan niriksheham. Yodhukamanavastithan. Karmaya sahayodhavyam. Asmin ranasamudyame. Yotsyamana-vaksheham. Ya etetra samagataha. Dhatra rashtrasya durbuddhe. Yuddhe priyachikirshavaha.
Arjuna Uvacha. Arjuna said. Uvacha means said. Senayo Ubhayo Madhye. Senayo means of the armies. Ubhayo, of both. So of the armies, of both the armies. So of both the armies, Madhye, in the middle. Ratham, which means chariot. Sthapaye. Sthapaya means place. Me means mine. Achyuta. he's addressing Krishna as Achyuta. Achyuta means infallible. Achyuta means someone who is fallen or can be felled. Achyuta means infallible. So he refers to Sri Krishna as Achyuta. So he's telling, or he's ordering his charioteer. Okay, though he refers to Sri Krishna as the infallible, he is very clear that Sri Krishna at this point in time is the charioteer, and he gives the command. He says, take my ratham, take my chariot and place it in the middle of both the armies. So Arjuna here obviously is still in the warrior frame of mind. And he says he wants Krishna, and Krishna has not yet become his guru. That will come later in chapter 2. Krishna has not yet become God. That will come much later in chapter 11. So he is telling his charioteer that take my chariot to the center of the battlefield. My chariot. So he doesn't give the importance of the charioteer that it's also his chariot. So he's very clear. Take my chariot. And this power to command comes from the love that they share, comes from the friendliness with which they have lived their lives together, the boyhood friendliness onwards. They are buddies, they are friends, they have respect for each other, and they love each other. That's where this comes from, you know. And and Arjuna is lucky to have Bhagavan himself to be able to command. And then, but then just telling Sri Krishna is not good enough, you know, because charioteers too, like if you remember when we talked about Sanjaya as the charioteer of Dhritarashtra, charioteers are confidants. Okay, the drivers are confidants of their masters. Sometimes they decide which route to take, where to go. They know better. And the owner of the vehicle depends on the charioteer, depends on the driver a number of times. So Arjuna realizes that what's just happened. The war bugles have sounded. The weapons are on the verge of being discharged. Which warrior would say, take my vehicle and take it to the center of the two armies? Is it not suicidal? I mean, if the war bugle has blown means anyone can fire. And at that stage, Arjuna says, take my chariot to the center. And he knows that Krishna will say no, or could say no. So then he tells Krishna why he wants that. And there he says, Yavad eten niriksheham. Yavadetan niriksheham. I want to inspect. Niriksha means inspect. While these are standing there, I want to inspect these people who, Yodha Kaman, those who are desirous of fighting, Avastitan, who are standing there. So I want to inspect these people, and with whom I must fight. Yodhavyam, I must fight this battle. This Rana means battle. Samudyame, which is about to start. This battle which is about to start, who are these people that I must fight? So he tells Krishna the reason why he wants to go. And in addition to that, he says that Yotsya Manan, with the goal of fighting, you know, I want to observe, Aveksheham, I want to observe these people who have this goal of fighting, Samagata, who have assembled here with that goal. Dhartarashtrasya, the sons of Dhritarashtra, Durbuddhehe, the evil-minded sons of Dhritarashtra. Durbuddhe means evil-minded. And also the other people who want to please these sons of Dhritarashtra, Priyachi Keshavaha, those who want to please the evil-minded sons of Dhritarashtra, they are all standing there. I want to observe these people. So, in essence, Arjuna is telling Krishna, take this rath there. I want to first inspect the enemy. I want to look at their lines. I want to look at these people who want to support the evil-minded sons of Dhritarashtra. Who are these people who want to please them, who want to fight for them? and fight for this cause, which is essentially evil. And I want to pick and choose the ones that I am going to kill. I'm going to pick and choose them. Now, this requires immense courage. Okay, this also requires not just immense courage, it requires immense faith in his own capabilities, because if he's going to the middle and people start shooting at him, he needs to respond. And the capabilities of his charioteer, because the charioteer is the one who's going to position him in such a manner that he can defend and attack as required. So now Arjuna has given this order, Sri Krishna has received the order. Now what does he do? Remember, he's the charioteer, and charioteer is a confidant. He knows what he has to do. This charioteer has a mind of his own. That will come out in the next 2 verses. And this Sanjay is relating to Dhritarashtra, what Sri Krishna does. 24 and 25.
Sanjaya Uvacha.
Sanjaya Uvacha.
Eva Mukto Hrishikesho.
Eva Mukto Hrishikesho.
Gudakeshena Bharata.
Gudakeshena Bharata.
Senayorubhayor madhye.
Senayorubhayor madhye.
Stapayitva ratottamam.
Stapayitva ratottamam.
Bhishmadrona pramuktaha.
Bhishmadrona pramuktaha.
Sarvesham cha mahikshitam.
Sarveksham cha mahikshitam.
Uvacha partha pashyaitan.
Uvacha partha pashyaitam.
Samavetan kurun iti.
Samavetan kurun iti.
Sanjaya uvacha. Eva mukto hrishikesho. Gudakeshena bharata. Senayorubhayor madhye. Stapayitva ratottamam. Bhishmadrona pramukataha. Sarvesham cha mahikshitam. Uvacha partha pasyetan. Samavetan kurun iti.
So here Sanjaya is telling Dhritarashtra. And what is he saying? Thus addressed by Gudakesha, O Bharata. Hrishikesha stationed the best of chariots between the 2 armies, in front of Bhishma, Drona, and all the rulers of the earth. And then he said, O Partha, please see the Kurus that are gathered in front of you. So here Sanjaya addresses Dhritarashtra as Bharata. That indicates that Dhritarashtra belongs to the lineage of King Bharata. Now, the name of our country, India as we know it, is Bharat. And that essentially means the land which was ruled by King Bharata. The land which was ruled by King Bharata is Bharat. And from the time of Mahabharata, the lineage starts. And all of us Indians are actually of that lineage. So I am also a Bharata in that sense. Now the term Hindustan, India is also known as Hindustan. Bharat is also known as Hindustan. Hindustan came from the Persians. And they referred to Bharat as Hindustan, or the Mughal empire at that time as Hindustan. The Persians, the Mughals were ruling over India, and the Persians used to refer to this country as Hindustan. And the term India came from the Greek. And the Greek, the river Indus or the river Sindhu in our name in Bharat, it's called the river Sindhu. The river Sindhu was pronounced as river Indus. And from there comes India. And the Greek used to refer to Bharat as India. However, the name of this country originally is Bharat. And the lineage of Bharat, the descendant, the direct descendant of King Bharat is King Dhritarashtra. In fact, all of them out there, Pandavas are also direct descendants. Kauravas also direct descendants. They're actually fighting cousins. Right? He refers to Arjuna as Gudakesha. Gudakesha means, essentially Gudakesha is Gudakyaha Ishaha. Gudakayaha Ishaha. Gudakayaha means, Gudaka means slumber. Ishaha means one who has conquered. So one who, slumber is also tamas, the attitude of tamas. A person who is the attitude of tamas. When we talked about, the introduction, Vedanta, the initial Vedantic concept, we talked about the aspects of tamas, rajas and sattvic nature. So the nature, the tamasic nature or tamas comes from the attitude of slumber, which is referred to as Gudaka. So a person who has conquered slumber, a person who is free of tamas is called Gudakesha. And Arjun is a person who is free of tamas. And tamas essentially leads to delusion. Remember we talked about shoka, moha, sorrow and delusion. Tamas leads to delusion. So this verse is extremely meaningful. So Sanjaya is telling Dhritarashtra that up until now, Arjuna has no delusion. He is delusion free. The reference to Isha in terms of Rishikesha, where he is talking about Bhagavan Sri Krishna, there he is not referring to one who conquered. There he is referring to Isha, the Lord, as the Lord who watches, who governs, who controls. What? The senses and the mind. Rishikesha is the Lord of the senses and the mind. So the one who watches, governs and controls the senses of the mind. So what does this charioteer, this Lord, do? He takes the chariot right. Now what did Arjuna tell him? Arjuna told him to take it in front, middle of the battlefield, between the two armies, so that he can look at these kings and these commanders who are trying to please the Kauravas, the evil-minded people, and he wants to inspect them and choose who he is going to kill. Krishna takes the chariot right in front of Bhishma and Drona. So if you see the verse, Bhishma Drona Pramutakaha. That means in front of. And not just in front of. Pramutaka means where you have eye contact. So here, Arjuna is standing in front of Bhishma and Drona. Of course, he can also see the rest of the commanders, the rest of the armies, but he has eye contact with Bhishma and Drona. And then Sanjaya relates to Dhritarashtra that Sri Krishna says, so this is the very little bit portion in the entire chapter 1 that Sri Krishna, and actually Sanjaya is quoting Sri Krishna. And Sri Krishna tells Arjuna, now see. So now I have put you in front of them. O Partha, Partha, Pashyaitan, please see. Tan, these. Samavetan, who are gathered. The Kurun. Who? The Kurun. Kurun means the Kurus. Now see the Kurus who are gathered in front of you to fight. Now what does Arjuna see? That we will see in the next satsang, which will be on next Saturday. The first chapter is actually a masterpiece. Okay, and I would really request you to go through some of the elements, like for example, Gudakesha. Why is the reference? Why is Arjuna called Gudakesha? Why is Krishna called Rishikesha? These kind of things are extremely interesting and have very in-depth meaning when we go through the rest of the Bhagavad Gita. All of these have in-depth meaning. So please, when I send you the notes, please go through them. Not only that, it's a masterpiece in terms of understanding the human mind. In our introduction, we talk about how Shoka and Moha are the enemies of Swadharma, meaning right action. Now we will see how Shoka and Moha prevent Arjuna from performing the right action. And this place, this Ratham Sthapayaha, where Arjuna demanded and commanded Krishna to place the Rath, and Krishna went and parked the Rath, that is where the entire Srimad Bhagavad Gita is going to unfold, at that spot. So we will see what happens in the next session, next Saturday from here. I am expecting that chapter 1 will take 2 more sessions, and then we will move on to chapter 2. We'll recite the
Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirghamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamataya Purnameva Vashishtate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.
Thank you, Hari Om. Now you can unmute yourself and also get the video on. We can see each other, and any comments, questions, observations.
Srini, I have one question, structural question. Some of the shlokas are 3 lines, some of the shlokas are 1 line. Is there a significance of that? Or?
There is no significance with respect to the Bhagavad Gita itself, but it is more of the poetry. Like I said, in some other context, the beauty of the Sanskrit language and the beauty of Sri Vedavyasa's poetry. In that, so as Sanjaya is describing various situations, you have the usage of either 1 line. For example, he says Arjuna Vacha Senayo Ubayom Madhye. So there he is just saying in that verse, he is just saying that Arjuna is asking for the Ratham to be taken to the center of the battlefield. There is nothing else to convey. And then the following 2 verses talk about why Arjuna wants the verse to be the chariot to be taken there. So it is more of the poetry rather than anything.
Okay.
Sarika, is that right? Would you like to add something?
No, I think that's right. Srini, I have a question actually.
Yeah.
So at this point, Arjuna is ready to fight the battle.
Yes.
He is ready. So he does not have any second thoughts in his mind.
Yes.
Okay.
In fact, it requires, not only is he ready to fight the battle, Arjuna is angry. He's probably seething with anger. For a warrior to say, and he's commanding, take my chariot to the middle of the battlefield. I want to see who the hell is there. It's like saying, who is this? Who is going to fight me? Let me see who I'm going to kill. That's his attitude, right? So at this point in time, he has aggression in him. He has, extreme amount of rage that is there. And he is just saying, who all are there who dare fight with me, and I'm going to destroy them. I'm going to go see them. So take my chariot there. So he commands Krishna.
Okay.
So at this point in time, yes, absolutely a warrior.
Right. So we'll see how that goes.
Srini, I have a question.
Yes, Betty.
To Dharma, you were talking about at the beginning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was talking at the beginning.
To Dharma.
Dharma, yeah.
Yeah. How do you know what your Dharma is?
That's an excellent question. Yeah. That's why that's exactly probably, instinctively, because even everyone, all of us, including me, we are trying to find that out. That's why I said that we should use our learning as we go through the Bhagavad Gita to find out what our dharma is. So Bhagavad Gita begins with the word dharma and ends with the word mama dharma. So use this content which is in between these 2 words to find out what my essential nature is. So yeah, so I love this definition of dharma. Dharma is what makes anything what it is. So a fire the dharma of a fire is heat, because without heat there is no fire. The dharma of the sun is light and heat, because you can't have a cold and damp, cold and dark sun. So what is it that without which I don't exist? In one way, when you look at it, that is what my dharma is. Because if I didn't have that, I would not exist. The other way to look at it is, what is it that makes me what I am? So if you are able to join these two, what is it that without which I will cease to exist? And what is it that makes me what I am? If we are able to connect these two, we should be able to find out who we are. Now, if we go back to the introduction, we also said that all of us have divinity within us. And my essential nature is that divinity, that consciousness. That is what we defined as that ultimate everlasting happiness, the deep core touching happiness, right? And that is what we defined as my fundamental nature. So that also, in a way implies that that is who I am. And if we find, and if we are able to unveil that divinity, we will know who we are. So in some ways it is complex and complicated. In some ways it is very easy. I would say ultimately where something resonates, I guess whenever something resonates, that is who we are.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I like these two questions you said now. It makes it more clear. Yeah. Thank you.
And these are some things that we can actually, maybe once in a while we should have one session where we are just debating, or maybe offline when we all meet with each other, we just talk about, these are things which would, you can talk about what is my dharma for the next 2 hours also. We can exchange views, we can exchange ideas, discuss this topic for a long period of time. It can get very, very interesting. I think the electricity went off. We lost some people, but some of you are there. I think we lost Petra there.
Ashok, we can also say that dharma is the right way of living also.
Yes, in fact, yeah. I also used a few terms, right way of living is also used for dharma. There are various other, the good is also used for dharma. To right way of living, I had used the term righteousness. Moral way of living, morality. What is my duty? That is also dharma. A religious code is also, it has various contexts. But ultimately, I would say, the inner essence is what dharma is.
Okay.
But yes, this would be a big topic to talk about.
So I have something to add here, Shri. So does that mean that each one of us defines his or her own dharma?
Sorry, Aditi, I couldn't understand what you're saying. Does that mean is all I got?
Okay, does that mean that each one of us defines his or her own dharma? We have our own definitions is what that I'm asking. Yes?
I wouldn't say define. Each one of us has to figure out what our own dharma is. And I trust that when we all figure out, you will find out that it all leads to the same place. The same definition. But yeah, we'll have to unveil it. We'll have to figure it out. We can't just make a statement, define, and each of us define it separately. So that's what it is. I would say that would be existing in delusion. But if we make that sincere, true effort to unveil what it is, to discover what it is, because it is within us, it is our essential nature, and ultimately it will be the same.
Thank you.
I think I just want to see I think it's a matter of definition. Yeah, what you are saying is dharma. If dharma is your responsibility, our responsibilities are different. So it is, everybody is different, right? But at the level, Srini, where you have defined the nature, essential nature is the dharma or the reason to be, that is such a high level where it has, I think the it has to merge together. But if you
Exactly.
make the definition very physiological definition, right, or reason why I am existing not as Atman but as Deepak, yeah, now. So my responsibilities are different than yours and everybody's, right? So at this level, it is really what Aditi is saying, probably, but it's a matter of, defining this, at what level you are trying to realize your
True.
dharma.
True, but I would disagree, because that's exactly where I say that, a lifetime is not enough to unveil, and if we define it and make it hard coded, the chances of unveiling become more and more difficult. So that's why I said this is a beautiful discussion, and there will be so many viewpoints, some aligned, some contrary. Yeah, but I come from a slightly different thought, because to me, a definition pretty much makes something hard coded. Okay, so if I define sound, then I understand sound in a particular manner, and I cannot unveil it and change it, or tweak it or anything like that, right? So for me, I would not define it. I would try to work through the concept.
So in other words, you are saying learning Gita is like doing MBA, where best answer is it depends.
See, I have also seen that it's not very, in some context, oftentimes these seem very difficult, but suddenly, when you get it, it seems extremely easy. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, in that context, yes, it depends.
I feel as you take your life journey, at each point you grow and you get aware of few things and few angles, which makes you aware and think about things and change your outlook.
Sure, yeah. Anyone else? Any other point?
Srini, this is Dinesh. Just one point. I think as we are all discussing about dharma, it really needs a good debate session, because just between four people over here, we have four different opinions, four different interpretation of what dharma is. Just as Deepak was talking and as Aditi was talking and you were talking, I was thinking about it. For example, dharma can also be extended as a point to the environment, because one of the things which you said, the dharma of a fire example is to burn and to give out heat. Okay, it's the dharma of fire itself, the nature of it. So if you take that interpretation, every human being who is born at the core has a particular common dharma for all human beings who are born in. But based on the environment and based the way they go, some become thief, and he thinks it is his dharma to steal, right? Because that's how he has grown up. That is how he believes in it. And the other people, so many a times, environment makes such a huge difference of what that individual person realizes in his life what his dharma is, right? So it's very interesting. It's such a simple word, but I guess that's what Bhagavad Gita is all about, right? As we go through it, and we'll figure it out, and we find out what we are all about. So it's a great discussion, Srini, and thank you for driving this, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, Dinesh, you put it so beautifully, and yeah, like I said, this is a discussion that can go on for a couple of hours at least, if not much longer. And I would encourage us to, do that every once in a while, in between the 2 Saturdays.
Sure.
Yep.
Sure. Yeah.
But yeah, very beautifully put.
Yeah. We'll definitely connect. Yeah. Thank you, Srini. Thank you for taking time.
If anyone else has a point, good. Otherwise, we can say goodbye till next Saturday. Okay, thank you all. Thank you very much. Hari Om, and we'll see you next Saturday.
Thanks.
You can switch on your video to say goodbye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Shweta.